Good evening, good evening. Welcome to my Live at 5 Sunday session. This is the ADHD Cutie, and I am so excited today. This is my very first interview session. It will be called Lifting Your ADHD Black Voices. And it is my absolute pleasure and honor to first introduce my very first guest, Miss Fouchina Kirkendoll.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. My name is Fouchina Kirkendoll, and it is a pleasure to be here and to be selected as your first guest. Ooh, I love it. To God be the glory.
Yes, always. So, uh, Fouchina and I first met, end of 2021, right? We did
Yeah,
a
I think so.
virtual event called
Her,
Her
her story.
Story.
Hmm.
Uh, she did her story, I did mine. We instantly clicked and found out that we had something very major in common.
Had quite a few things in common.
Yes, definitely. But today's episode is the commonality that we are both ADHD moms. We both have ADHD and we have ADHD sons.
Hmm.
So, to start off, Fuchina, I would like for you to briefly tell us your story, starting with how and when you found out your son first had ADHD, leading up and ending with how you yourself found out about yours.
Okay, well, first of all, that's a very good question. It actually started off, my son had auto processing disorder. That's when he had a lot of ear infections, couldn't process it. It was during those developmental years.
Mm-hmm.
I would take him for different testing, and I just noticed that, the attention span, uh, the lack of focus, couldn't keep things organized, couldn't remember things. And here I thought he was being disrespectful when the truth of the matter is he really did not know what was going on.
Yep.
And I had to go and get him tested. I noticed that he was falling short when he comes to school, but that also was a part of the auto processing disorder as well, because
Mhm.
sometimes those things
The
overlap
symptoms
one
overlap.
another.
Yes.
You have to be careful with that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I finally got him tested. At that point, as a mother, you're concerned. You want to do everything you can do for your child. You want to make sure that he's getting the best, when he needs it. And to me, I was like, gosh, I feel like I'm failing him. I need to find out what's going on. So it wasn't until after that I decided to go see a psychiatrist to go get him tested, go get him evaluated, and kind of find out he had ADHD. And it's interesting because as I was learning more about my son and his ADHD and his tendencies, I was like, wait a minute, those are the tendencies I have.
Ding, ding, ding,
And then,
ding, ding, ding.
yeah, those are the tendencies I have. So wait a minute. I need to work on me, lack of structure. I'm always late. I don't want to be late. I don't intend to be late, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I am always, I'm late.
Yep.
Sometimes I really can't help that. I'm doing better, as I'm, being becoming structured in my life. But it's interesting to me that I've gone all these years and not knowing that I am the one until it was told to me by the doctor that ADHD is inherited by
Mm-hmm.
one of the parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two children with ADHD, actually, my
Wow.
oldest and my youngest. And come
Wow.
to find out,
Wow.
it comes from me. And I
Uh-huh.
couldn't figure out, but now it just answers all the questions
Yes,
why
it all
I
makes
always
sense,
say,
right?
why was some things coming at me all at once? I can't
Mm-hmm.
process it.
Mm-hmm.
And then as much as I used to be in clutter, I couldn't operate in that. And
Yeah.
it took me 51 years, I lie to you, 51 years, where I am finally decoloring my life. I'm decluttering my home. I'm decluttering, and I'm finding that now that I have structure, it helps so much. And discipline has a lot to do with it too,
Yeah.
but just wanting to do it. And when I find myself getting there, I have me and my son, because if the body ain't, the head ain't right, the body ain't gonna be right. So I had to work with myself and then work with my son. I'm like, no, we're not going to go backwards. We're going to continue to move forward. Yeah, we may slip or whatever. We're not going to stay there. And so that's what it is. It's interesting what you find out when you're finding out trying to get your child help because find out you need to
Yes.
help yourself.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I love that you said that because I say that all the time on my YouTube channel. You got to start with you first.
Mm-hmm.
ADHD is 85% hereditary.
Yes.
So if the child has it, either mama or daddy or
Or
both have
that.
it. I
Yep.
say it all the time. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Virginia, tell me, as far as the school system, have you sought accommodations for your son? And if so, how has that journey been for you?
Yes, I have sought accommodation. And as a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to change some of the accommodation because he's older now.
Mhm.
And it has been interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah, or let me say special.
Oh
It's
my
been
gosh.
very special because,
Woo.
I get it. They have 28 other kids or whatever. And
Mhm.
I tell them this, you have 28 children, but I have one. And that's the one I'm responsible
Thank
for.
you.
So
Yeah.
things are put in place. And it's funny, I just had a parent teacher conference meeting with all his teachers at one time with my son in attendance. And I said, we got to work together because we are the village. Now, if you want me to do my part, I need you to do your part. And I told my son, I need you to do your part because in order for this triangle to work, we all have to do our parts. And I told you all when I met you that I am that parent that's going to be emailing you, calling you, and we go like we have this meeting here today. I am that parent. I am the very involved parent. So it's been an interesting role, but what I will encourage the mothers out there, consistency is the key to breakthrough. You have to stay consistent. They're looking for you not to do it so they can, say, well, you haven't done that. And right now, I feel like there's like a red flag on my son because they're constantly like, I won't say nitpicking, but they're picking out every little thing. But see, I told him, Mama knows. And I told my son, you don't take the place of me. Meaning, if your teacher tells you something that you don't like, it's not your place to have a conversation with him or with her as if y'all two on the same level. You have to respect her because she is the person in authority, or him, and let mama handle it. Just make sure that when I go out there and defend you, I am defending you on rock. That means truth. And if you give me truth, when you give me truth, I don't care what that truth is. I need to know what it is so I can defend you because if not, they're going to blow me out the water.
Mhm.
And mama don't roll like that now.
Mm,
I can't go into a
mm,
gunfight with a knife.
mm.
So, yeah, I hope I answered that question. I know it's
That
long.
definitely, yes, that definitely answered the question. I had similar instances with my son, and
Yeah.
it was a serious fight. He has graduated, thank Jesus, June 2021,
Yes,
but
to
it was
God be
a
the
fight
glory.
every single day.
Yes. And you have
Elementary
to stay
school,
on
they're
top of
keeping
them.
him in from recess, and I'm like, there's something wrong with
Yes.
that. No, and I didn't know until I had one of these meetings,
Yes.
finding out that they first of all they brought in a older teacher who had retired, and because the teacher shortage was so bad, they brought
Mm-hmm.
in this
Mm-hmm.
retiree. She didn't know how to deal with these young kids, so she's keeping him
Mm-hmm.
in almost every day to finish work. And this is kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 no. So I went to his pediatrician, got some backup in writing, and my pediatrician hit the ceiling. She was like, no. She said, keeping an ADHD kid inside
From
from
recess.
recess is
Exactly.
like tying a deaf person's hands.
Yeah.
That's how serious it is. They need that outlet to be able to
Exactly.
let all that extra energy out because they don't know what it is and they don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
They
It's
don't know
interesting.
why they
It's
can't stay in their seat and be
exactly.
stop
And
flicking the pencil and tapping their foot, and they don't understand. Their brains are not supposed to understand yet. That
exactly.
they're not cognitively developed at that stage yet. They're not
Yeah.
supposed to.
Yeah. It's funny because when they said that my son was going to have silent lunch, I said, you're going to put an ADHD child on a silent lunch. Let me know how that work out for you. Let me know how it works out for you.
Uh-huh.
Because as far as I'm concerned, I tell my son, make sure you tell the teacher, always prep. I'm all big about prepping. If something goes down, you need to remove yourself from the situation, and then you need to tell the teacher. Because, see, once you've done that, you have now put yourself in a good position and I can come in and back you up.
Yeah.
But yeah, putting my son in a silent lunch and he's ADHD, you setting him up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of that, my son has his behavioral folder and they're supposed to sign it, and I noticed that only one of the teachers was doing it. And I said, Chase, what's going on with your folder? And the teacher said, well, the caseworker said that it's Chase's responsibility to make sure, which I get that. I do to a degree, but not when you're dealing with an ADHD child. Okay. That same meeting I had, we had to have that conversation because what you're not going to do is set my child up for failure. I
Mm-hmm.
said, you're asking, I understand the purpose of why you want him to do it. However, he is not there yet. So the goal as a village is to get him there.
Yes.
So what I am requesting, let's make sure we're clear. What I'm requesting is that you check that folder every day. And if he doesn't come to you,
Mm-hmm.
you gently remind him about it as well, because I'm holding you all accountable for your part so I can hold him accountable for his part and I can be accountable for mine. But if you do not communicate with me, there is a break here. And that is something I'm not going to do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and believe it or not, that caseworker went back and forth with me. I said, first of all, this is not a conversation. My question is simply this. I am expecting the behavior folder to come to me. Are you going to be able to do that? Because you're not his teacher, you're his caseworker. Your input plays a high volume on it. And she is of all the teachers, she's the least person that doesn't communicate with me. She didn't even know about the behavior folder. I had to mention it to her, and then she had to go to my son's counselor. That was a problem for me. You're the caseworker, and you don't know. So I had to let her know we're not doing that. There's a serious break in communication. I said everybody is communicating with me, with the exception of you, and you are the caseworker. She indicated that she was a math teacher, but right now I'm dealing with the caseworker part. So what we need to do is get on the same boat. That's why I'm here today. So we can have this conversation. And you as parents, let me just tell you this. That's your child. Okay. That's your child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And you are their only advocate and you have to advocate for them. So
Yes.
I was happy that my son was there because I wanted him to know, you know what, I got your back. I got your back. Just make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
but
and they need to understand what it is that they're expected to do, what their
exactly.
rights are, what accommodations they have, when they can have them, because I found that out the hard way. And it wasn't until like almost towards the end of middle school where I was able to be very specific in what I was asking for with
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah's accommodations. They were
Right.
very, very specific when I got done with middle school, even
Mm-hmm.
down to if he has a behavioral calendar, I put it in that accommodations. Who is supposed to check it? Who is supposed to
That's
write off
right.
on it? If he doesn't bring it to you by mid class, then you're to ask him for. I had to put all that in writing because yeah,
Yeah,
they
and
will
it's
try
sad
you.
that you have to do it because the
They
first
will
thing
try
I
you.
asked is, are you familiar with ADHD children? Because you can't treat them the same. Now, I'm not saying that they're able to, you know, do, fool out the way or whatever and not take the responsibility. But what I'm saying is the expectation you have of them cannot be the same that you have of
They
others.
learn different. They process
Yeah,
information
they
differently.
really do.
So to
And
some
they're the
extent,
most
they have to
brightest
be
kids.
taught. Some
Yeah.
extension, they have to be taught differently. It is what it is.
Exactly. They both going to this, they're going and they're headed to the same place, but just taking a different
Yes,
direction.
yes.
That's it.
And the directions you give them have to make sense to them.
To
That's what a
them.
lot of teachers don't get.
Yes.
Well, I explained it to them, okay, but that doesn't mean they understood it.
And now, my
I don't
response
care if
back to
every
that
child, I
is
don't care if every child in your classroom understood it. That does not
exactly.
mean that that one ADHD kid understand.
Exactly.
And I guarantee you, there's more than one ADHD kid.
Oh, most definitely.
Unfortunately,
So you have a lot of teachers that have
unfortunately, yes,
ADHD.
unfortunately, a lot of the Black parents and families either don't know or don't want to admit it.
Right.
I need you to know what I'm dealing with so you can
Hmm.
deal with it and we can work together and get him the help he needs.
Right.
He's not
Well, I
going to
want
be
to
he's not
piggyback
going
on
to be
something you
failing and
said.
all of that because you want to act like you don't know and
Exactly.
you don't want to
Exactly.
acknowledge that I know.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, we're not doing
Exactly. I want to piggyback on something you said. Oh gosh, I lost my thought.
it.
It was in reference
That ADHD
to,
brain.
let me think. Holy Ghost, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back, bring it back. Oh, it was in reference to giving directions. I was like, when you give him directions, have you asked him, what did you understand me to say? And what is your expectations? Because even with auto processing disorder, you have to do that with them.
Hmm.
You cannot assume
Yes.
that everything is not okay.
Simple,
So
short directions. And
exactly,
yeah, I had to do the same thing with my son and he would just repeat what I said. I'm like, "No, you tell me what that means to you.
exactly,
I know you can repeat what I just said. What does
right.
it mean to you? What is your
Mhm.
understanding of what I just said?"
And then I dissected even further. Okay, so y'all, you said that. What does that mean again? So what's the first thing you need to do, and then what do you do after that?
Mhm.
Yes, yeah,
And sometimes you got to break it down further. Let them do the
yeah.
first thing and come back and then
And then come back
second
and do the
step.
second thing. Yes,
Go
ma'am.
come
And
back.
it
Now
and
that
actually
might
that
take
works
up your time, but hey,
exactly,
you're gonna get the results you want because they
exactly.
cannot, they cannot. Parents need to understand that they cannot hold all of that information. They cannot.
My son has really told me, Mom, you're coming, you're giving me a lot of things at one time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's overwhelming.
Yes.
And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. So let's do this. Let's do this part first. And when you're done, come back to me and we'll do it. And I had to learn that.
Me too.
I don't want
Me
you to,
too.
no, I had to learn that.
Mm-hmm. I did too.
Yeah.
Seriously had to learn that.
Hmm.
Hmm. So then, now, once you found out about your own ADHD, what uh, what are some strategies that you've put in place to help you deal with your own ADHD that you can now pass on to your son to help him advocate for himself?
Structure. And being consistent to it. I had to, one, for instance, I'll just say, I had a problem with organizing stuff in my home, so it comes off as junky and stuff. So I finally just started doing it space by space. By a friend of mine told me, just take one portion at a time and do this one portion at a time, and it worked. So I had to create a structure and a balance for myself. And once I did that, I was able to do it with Chase because I'm like, now the house stays clean. If something's out of place, we put it back in place. We don't just leave it there, And now if you'll try to drop something, oh, I know, brother, you need to go and pick that up. No, I think you forgot something. You need to pick that up. And I know it's like, it's kind of like, but no, we're gonna get it right. We're gonna have to get it right because I tell my son, I'm preparing you because I won't be here all your life. I will be here all of my life. Okay. Once my life is gone, you need to be able to move forward. So this is the time I'm instilling these seeds so you can understand. I said, a friend of mine did a show on this that says, trust me now, believe me later.
I had to do the same thing with my son, especially as he got into high school, because
Mm-hmm.
high school is preparing him for college. They're not doing high school
Yes.
stuff, they're doing getting you ready for college stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And for the ADHD
Mm-hmm.
brain, it's not there. They're in the moment,
Yeah.
right there in the moment. And I had to get the school to understand that, to get the teachers to understand that, but also try to keep him on track
Excuse
so he
me.
could
Mm-hmm.
be ready. And a lot
Excuse me.
of adults will say, well, the world's not going to treat him that, and he's got to be ready. Okay, I understand that, but we as the parents have to give them the tools to get him ready. He's not going to
And
just
not only that,
automatically be ready because he's in high school now. That's not how it
mm-hmm.
works. We have to teach
Mm-hmm.
them. In other words, we have to teach them strategies to strengthen their executive function skills, because that's the root of what's really going on.
Yes, exactly. And and it goes back to that village, that community again. I told my son there's nothing you can do in school that I don't already know before you get home,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the way I structure it. I
Mm-hmm.
tell them, teacher, you make me aware, and they email me Johnny on the spot and let me know. So when Chase comes home, hey, how you doing? Blah 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 blah. I give him the opportunity to say something. Well, how was your day? Blah 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 blah. Okay, well, how was it in third period today? How'd it go there?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then we go into the story. Okay, well then, one of the things I've learned is learning how to listen, actively listen, even if it's something you don't want to hear, that you know is not right. I had to actively listen and keep my mouth shut and show my body posture, my
Yes.
body demeanor to let them
Yes.
know I am here for you.
Right.
I may not agree with it, but I'm here because I want to hear what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that moment, my strategy is simple: this, let me repeat what I heard from you. So I'll break it piece by piece. This is what I heard, blah, 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 blah. I said, I'm on the right track so far? Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you're frozen. I hope you're not talking. Okay.
What could I have done better? And honestly, I've had him say, nothing. I don't think I did anything wrong. I said, you know what? I appreciate your honesty in that. I
Mm-hmm.
said, but let's break this down a little bit further. What is your role when you're home with mom? Is your role as an adult, or is your role as a child? When you go to school, what is your role? Are you an adult or are you a student? So, what you have to understand is you have people of authority over you, and you have to respect authority. You may not like what they do, they may not be fair what they've done, but if they have done it, then whose responsibility is it to correct it? Is it yours as a child, or is it mine as your mother as an adult? And so I found that when I started breaking things down like that, it makes him think.
Mm-hmm.
It makes him do that critical thinking. Okay, well maybe I shouldn't have handled it like that. So now with you knowing your place and knowing my place, if you could have done that situation all over again, how would you have handled it?
Let me ask you this. Has your son had any kind of behavioral issue that wasn't his fault, but he doesn't understand that it wasn't his fault and the school cracked down on him? Did you ever had a situation like that?
Not very clear in your part. Well, I think.
Let me give you an example. My son had a situation like that in I believe it was middle school or either
Mhm.
freshman year in high school.
Okay.
And as they get further up into grades, they just want to have friends. They want to be cool and be liked or whatever, but
Yes.
especially when they have any kind of neurodivergent issue going on, like
Mhm.
ADHD. And so my son got caught up with these so-called friends. And one instance was the friend had my son call a boy into the bathroom
Mm.
to talk.
Mhm.
And so as soon as the boy enters the bathroom, bam, the friend punches him in the face. And there's a small group of other boys in the bathroom, and only two of them have their phones out recording this incident. Well, unfortunately, my son is one of those who has his phone out. So, of course, they all get busted, and they all got the same amount of time of suspension from school. Now, of course, I hit the ceiling with that. I was like, wait a minute, he wasn't in the fight. I understand he was wrong being there and
But he was
recording, but
guilty by
he didn't fight.
association.
So I'm like, so I was really, really pissed off at that, but trying to get my son to understand why he was in trouble,
Hmm.
why he got suspended, and why it was wrong for him to be there. He understood he shouldn't have been there, but he wasn't understanding how the school sees him recording it. It makes it look like he knew something was going to happen.
Okay. So the question you're asking is, I think we need, and it's just my opinion. Okay. Like my son, he got in trouble because he was participating in a food fight.
Yeah, something like that.
The food, and he was handing them the carrots back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the carrots back. Okay. And was this during the time they were throwing the food? He said yes. Okay. So let me ask you a question. Why would you hand him the food back when he was throwing the food at you? I'm just curious. Okay. So even if you meant well on that, you understand why the teacher felt like you were participating in the food fight? I said, now, if you could have done it differently, what would you have done? Or what should you do? Remove myself from the situation. But mom, I said, okay, well, how do you normally get the teacher's attention? We just get up and go to her. Okay, so that tells me you knew exactly what you needed to do. So it's now that critical thinking. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't blame that on ADHD. I can blame that using what's right and what's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You knew that was a situation. And we know as kids, whether they're ADHD or not, they know right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
Mm-hmm.
my take on that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm not gonna, and I said you're not gonna use ADHD as a scapegoat
Mm-hmm.
to do whatever you want, because the truth of the matter is right is right and wrong
Wrong
is
is
wrong.
wrong. Yeah.
And you know the difference. And you know not to put yourself in a position. Now, if you got kids and it's distracting, then what should you do? Because I know that's gonna derail, that's gonna distract you. So what do you do? So I told the teachers, if he gets to that point, then you need to put him in some type of isolated space. I don't care if it's just him sitting to the window. I don't really care.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't really care. So, but the thing is, if he's coming to you, making him aware of it, then you need to handle it. I tell my son, the teachers can't handle it if you don't make them aware.
Yeah.
So everyone has to play their portion, especially
Right.
our children as well. Because
Right.
just because you have ADHD, don't mean that you got to scapegoat.
Right. Right. And I did tell my son that, but I did not understand why he was suspended the same amount of time as the kid who did the fighting.
Because he was guilty by association.
Yeah. See, that's
I know, but
I,
when
I
when you tell
understand.
me
I
this,
understand that now, but he did not. Even the
I yeah,
principal
I
talked to
understand.
him.
I
He just
yeah,
didn't get it. He didn't.
yeah,
So he had
yeah.
that
But
was
he was
that was a hard lesson he had to learn. But
yeah.
I
He
guarantee
won't do it again. He won't. He won't do it again.
he won't do
See
that.
that?
Yeah.
He
So
won't do it again.
okay. So as time is winding down, I want to ask
Mhm.
you one last thing, and
Sure.
that is, tell us one thing that you wish teachers really, truly knew and understood about ADHD in their classrooms.
That they will become more educated on how to handle ADHD children and see how is it different when dealing with an ADHD child and a regular child. So it will be educating themselves.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that because
Mm-hmm.
I even had a meeting one time where I printed out all the symptoms of ADHD and I took it and
Mm-hmm.
highlighted all the comments that they made about him in class. They were
Mm-hmm.
practically mirror images, the symptoms and their comments. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what I did for them. I gave each teacher a copy. It's like, this is what ADHD looks like in your classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think they understood it.
I think that's what I like the idea of that, and I think that's what I'm going to do because I'm here about he's always chit chatting with friends, blah blah blah
Mhm.
blah blah blah.
Every
Yeah,
quarter, every semester,
yeah,
same
he's going to
comment.
do
Yep.
that.
Yep.
But he's ADHD. That's what he does.
Hmm.
Are you giving him the breaks that he needs to have? Are you? So I
Hmm.
like the idea of that. I think I will do that.
Yep. Yep. Well, Miss Fouchina, our time is wrapping up, but I am so happy and excited that we did this. And we
Yes.
definitely have to do this again. I plan on keeping this going. I want
Awesome.
to
Well, what you're
hear
doing is
from
phenomenal.
I want to hear from your people, my people, all of our social media pages to see if you all enjoyed this. Was it informative? Do you have any questions? Feel free to put them either on my page, her page, or both. This will be premiering on my YouTube channel, ADHD Cutie. You can put your comments there if you like. So we are going to wrap this up. Thank you so very much.
To
And
God be the glory.
yes,
Thank you for having me here. I'm truly humbled.
absolutely. Thank you so much for stopping in.